Welcome to AI to Z. In Season 2, hosted by Anna Frazzetto, we delved into transformation mindsets, AI-driven talents and healthcare breakthroughs, plus the evolving work landscape. Here's a look back at the season's standout moments.
My advice I would give to folks that are on a transformation journey is to work on your mindset. And if you have a mindset that's not a protective stance, that you let yourself be vulnerable and open and view change as good and keep your brain wide open for a long period of time to all those new experiences. You have to be vulnerable. But you're gonna get burned. It's gonna happen again and again because you have to stay open and non-protective to handle that type of cultural change, role change, etc. You have to be vulnerable, get burned, and then let it go. And you have to keep at it again and again and again with that open mindset.
So, Cara, you hit on something that it almost feels like it goes against any, training that you have as you're kind of excelling in your career, to be open and be vulnerable and to kind of expose yourself where normally you kind of like, you don't want to show your feelings and, you're strong and you can handle the risk and you can kind of take control. So how did you balance that?
I have found myself over time to be really resilient, and resilient in a little bit of a different way than most experience it. And I've read before that resilience isn't avoiding a shock. It's not avoiding that challenge. It's recovery from that shock and taking some growth out of it. So that's what I have tried to do, is I've tried to make myself very comfortable operating in ambiguity. And part of that is I'm kind of a slow learner. That makes any sense. I have to have a lot of context before I'm comfortable to. It's not that I'll hold back on making a decision. I will make decisions on some without information, but I really want a lot of context before I feel like I'm on solid ground. Right. So that being able to operate in ambiguity allows me to stay really open to those differences that are going to come at me. It doesn't have to be showing your feelings or emotions so much. It's more about listening to others and trying to understand the context of the million individuals and perspectives that you've got around you and coming at you. If you can take that, then you can shape that ambiguity and you know what's going on.
If you think about L&D historically, they were a rudimentary training department that provided the basic skills that people needed to be able to do their jobs. Nothing very strategic, nothing very, life-changing. It was really just, how do you do your job? And let me train you how to do that. And that was the good one. That was the good company that had a great, robust training department. Other companies were handing people the book and just saying, here's the employee guideline, here's your desk, and do whatever you need to do. It's evolved tremendously because that was not even 15, 20 years ago. And now we're talking about companies that are supporting business initiatives. Chief learning officers are either reporting directly into a CEO or they're reporting into the head of HR. And they're strategically aligned with what the business is doing. If you think about the gap between what the business needs and what the employees have, the training department is right there. We're there to help build the skills. We're there to help build the knowledge, share the knowledge, and then be able to change those mindsets. So closing that gap, so that employees are the ones who are going to be closing that or, achieving or accomplishing the objectives. So it's changed tremendously. And then when you add in layers like technology is changing. Never would I have thought that we would have used AI or machine learning when it comes to any type of a training, whether it's a workshop or a conversation. But here we are, we're using AI, ChatGPT, and then we've got virtual reality, which I think is such an amazing way to really simulate real world. And we're bringing that into the training department because the training department used to be that cost center. We were expensive. We had lunches to pay for. We had travel to pay for. We had salaries to pay for. And yet we weren't really tied to that bottom line, that revenue. So being able to close that gap, not only from a content and a skills perspective, but also to make the line closer from the training event to revenue. And that's really how it's changed, is that we've become more strategic.
Let's start with the inverse. I never thought of that word as having one positive connotation to it for the majority of my life. I think despite what people see, I think people right now, they see the version that they get today, which is the keynote speaker who has done a lot of rehearsal, a lot of preparation, a lot of research, who comes across well-spoken. And I laugh at this sort of external perception because I can even still to this day feel in my body all of the awkwardness, all of the insecurity that I think I held for the first, 25 years of my life that really had a grip on me. So you mentioned quickly being, first born to immigrant parents. My parents are from India and Pakistan, respectively. I was first in the US, born here. And so anybody with that story kind of understands this, trying to figure out how you fit into the fold. They have different customs, traditions than what they came to this country observing kids of similar age doing. So my food didn't smell the same in my lunchbox. My clothes were always slightly different. They weren't like the stylish things my friends were wearing. I couldn't wear my hair, at the time everybody was spraying their bangs really high. I wasn't allowed to do that. And so every part of me felt like the version of me that was on display was clashing with the version that I really wanted to be. And without overly simplifying it, I'm Henna. At the time, it was the 80s, Hanna-Barbera was it. And I just wanted to be Anna or Jennifer or Michelle. Like, just give me one of these simple names. But nope, everything was a little bit askew in my world. And it felt like all through high school and until I got to college, it needed to be something that I solved for. How do I stop feeling awkward? I feel awkward all the time. I just don't want people to know I'm feeling this way. And it wasn't until I got to college and then ultimately into the professional world that I kind of had this realization, actually, Henna, running from it is impossible. It is impossible. So about time you consider a new approach.
I think it's critical that organizations really start with their business strategy. So anything you're doing with AI should be aligned to your company's goals and to your organization's risk tolerance. So I see a lot of executives who get really excited by the technology, right? Like you said, there's a lot of buzz about this. And so I often hear things like, we need to be using generative AI. And so they're searching for a problem in which to put a solution they've already determined, right? They're trying to say, how can I make generative AI the solution to some problem? Rather than starting that other way around and really starting with the problems you're trying to solve and then go from there. So that's first, is start with what you're trying to solve. Second, you need that cross-functional expertise in the room to help you really balance that opportunity and risk. So you need to bring together not just your business leaders, but also your legal and compliance folks, your information security folks, and so on, to help you think through the implications and really evaluate what are the best opportunities to pursue. And of course, you need deep AI experts to help lead those conversations. And there's a lot of subtleties in AI in sort of both the risks and the benefits. And so you really do need some level of deep expertise involved in those conversations. I've seen a number of organizations who sort of skip that, who say, well, because of the democratization, there's all sorts of tools, we can just start using them. But they don't fully understand some of the nuance. And so they're missing in some way, sometimes on the benefit side and sometimes on the risk side. So that cross-functional kind of group to bring together to help do that balancing of risk and opportunity, I think, is really critical. And then additionally, organizations should be making sure that they actually have the appropriate governance and guardrails in place today for how AI is being used in their organizations right now. So there's a number of studies from even from a year ago showing that about half of employees are using AI in their jobs in some capacity. But only a small fraction of companies have any sort of AI governance policies or guardrails in place. And so they're putting their organizations at undue risk, in my opinion. So I really encourage organizations who haven't yet started tackling AI to really start with oversight of how it's being used in their organizations today. And that doesn't need to be heavy-handed. It can be still very light. So it doesn't need to be a huge initiative or very cumbersome, but just some guardrails around what people can and should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing with the tools available to them. There's a number of resources out there for how to think about AI governance. So one I was involved in was with the Athena Alliance, and they launched their AI governance playbook in March. And that was an initiative that I co-authored and co-chaired with a number of other women. It's available on the website to download, and it's really meant to be a very practical framework to help organizations think about incorporating AI into their governance and decision-making processes.
We are looking at products now that can augment both the candidate experience as well as hopefully support our recruiting efforts internally. So there are products that go to your career website, and as a candidate, I upload my resume. These AI-based tools are able to read your resume, which we would ingest anyway to kind of, align your experience with our job descriptions. But they are able to glean from the contents of your resume some of the skills that you may not have specifically called out. So one example that was given to me was candidate was a teacher, but she was applying for a job in communications. And at first glance, these two things may not seem very well aligned, but the teacher's bringing presentation skills to the table. She is bringing communication skills to the table. And using AI, we're able to find potential candidate matches that we may have overlooked before. It also enables the candidate to be presented with potential jobs based on that match that they wouldn't have thought to apply for. So they saw a posting on LinkedIn, they applied for that one role. Now we want to suggest other roles we think might be suitable for them that they might be interested in, and hopefully encourage them to apply to those roles as well. So that helps us because it increases the candidate pool tremendously. The flip side of that is our recruiters. We get hundreds, if not thousands, of resumes for certain positions. So what can we do to make the recruiter's experience that much more simple? And AI is really able to ingest that job description and use that same kind of pattern matching logic to find skills in candidates that closely match and allow us to rank candidates. These tools are incredibly brilliant as well. They are using sources like LinkedIn to see, what? Jackie's a good candidate. She's got the skills we're looking for. Let's take a look at her past experience and job history. And look, it looks like Jackie's changing jobs every 4 years. She's been at her current role for about 3 years. Sounds like she might be ready. So maybe we do some outbound recruiting and reach out to her if she has not actually come to our job site and applied for something. So AI is going to change the way we recruit candidates immeasurably. And I think it's going to make it better for both the candidate by providing them with opportunities that they may not have thought of, as well as on the recruiter side, allowing them to focus on candidates that are the best fit based on their job history, based on their skill set, and hopefully based on as job descriptions change, which is constant now, help them kind of recruit faster and more efficiently.
There's always something that needs doing that you're trying to achieve, and you're looking for a tool to do that. You might remember the first time Gmail said, you mentioned an attachment, but there isn't one. I as someone with ADHD who is forgetful, I love that feature. I also love the feature that said, hey, you have a meeting to cross down. You need to leave now. Now, I need that alert to come up about 20 minutes before then and about 5 times to make sure I actually leave on time, particularly if I need to get my children to put their shoes on. But if you think about supportive is really, how do we help people not make mistakes? How do we help people correct errors? How do we help people use it? I think specifically to AI, it's how do we help them understand what to do with this? Because it is so new, because people aren't quite sure. When I do mentoring, and I do it about once a week with someone who signs up on a mentoring platform, I'm looking at a resume and I'm like, have you put this in ChatGPT yet? Why? I'm like, well, why don't you get it to try and edit this and make it more clear, or try and help you write a really high impact summary of your qualifications, or help you rewrite these other things. So you just see people's eyes light up. There's like, wait, I can use AI for that? You'll hear a lot about explainability in AI. And explainability is, can we say what the model does? And it's kind of hilarious to me how much they don't understand about how models work. But they'll say explainable. I think it's more important to think about being understandable, because explainable is you can explain it as a data scientist, as a machine learning specialist, as an AI person, as a deep learning neural net, whatever. That doesn't mean that a customer is able to understand how we got to this number. And sometimes it doesn't matter, right? You'll see predictions and things and, like, that's interesting. Or, I'm kind of generally okay with that. But if you need to make a really important decision, and in my day-to-day life, I'm dealing with people who are making decisions in the billions and trillions because we're talking about major real estate ideas, they need to know where that came from. They need to know what that methodology is. They need to know what's underpinning that, because they have to turn around and explain that to their client. Accessibility is a big thing. I've seen some interesting research out of the University of Washington about accessibility. In some ways, AI has tremendous potential for accessibility. If you struggle to visualize something, you can just put a prompt into DALL-E and you can see what it meant. If you have autism, you can use chatbots to be able to kind of understand the subtext or a joke, or to be able to have someone else proof your copy before it goes out to say, is this message kind of delivering the way I want it to? I asked one of the tools to create an image of a person in a wheelchair, and it couldn't quite render the face right. It can't quite do prosthesis right. So it's definitely missing on some accessibility, but we're having diverse voices at the table, of having robust testing protocols, of having good regulatory and industry standards for how we prevent these things, of having really great testing, of having really concrete feedback loops with your customer base. So if you screw it up, when you screw it up, that you're able to identify it and rectify it.
I would say there's a very interesting trend that we are seeing in cultural fits within organizations. From a technological standpoint, a lot of the boxes are checked when it comes to tech stacks, cloud computing, and some of the nuances of those technical requirements for positions. But it really is finding the right cultural fit, finding the individuals that buy into your brand of leadership or your company's vision for how they see themselves. And most importantly, what they can do to contribute to that vision and, make themselves a vital member of the team.
And that's such an incredible point that you're making, Donnie, because I think some of the challenges that we're seeing that's impacting talent acquisition globally is where companies think that they can use tools to try to find the talent that they need. But obviously, the human aspect of being able to vet out a candidate and take into account the cultural fit are such a critical component of the recruitment landscape.
Absolutely. And also, what do people, or especially companies, spend the most amount of time on is finding the right talent. And if they make the wrong hire, that can have a lasting effect with not only the team, but the overall goal of the business. It is about, really understanding the person that you're speaking with, the hiring manager, the business, or the founder of that organization, and really get down to the fundamental bits that we are able to use to help screen candidates. Not every person is right for every company. And that's where we come in. We're able to match the right role with the right company, with the right individual, so that everyone essentially is happy. And most importantly, they feel fulfilled.
Excellent. So, Donnie, what do you see as the recruitment landscape evolving over the next few years?
Over the next few years, I think it'll be a mix of technical as well as cultural perspectives that we could focus on. Technical, we hear all about AI and how, technology is making all of our lives much easier, but it is about understanding those technologies, understanding those tools, and most importantly, what they're capable of, and being able to put that into business perspective. And then I would say from a cultural perspective, it really is understanding, how to get the best out of individuals. And most importantly, with the new generation that is coming up, it is about making sure that everyone feels like they're contributing to the team, even from a small perspective or a large perspective. I also feel that delegation is going to become very important in the future as far as ensuring that everyone not only feels like they're contributing to, the project or whatever the overall goal is, but also they can give them some room for growth, room for areas of improvement, because there's a trend in hiring that they want somebody that did that exact industry, that exact job previously, when you need to be able to add some additional bits to the table. If someone's been doing the same job forever, where is the growth in that? Where are they going to learn, and how are they ultimately going to improve themselves?
I've been managing global teams for 10 years. Before COVID, I worked in an office. I didn't have any team in my local area. My teams were all over the country and all over the world. We were, for all intents and purposes, remote. Even if they were in other offices, and yes, it could be argued, well, they had the benefit of working with each other, but they also worked with global teams. So it's just this funny idea that like it's a new thing. So as we've talked about before, this is really my biggest pet peeve, really, is this idea that people think that they're more productive in the office. And what I always say to that is just show me the stats. I'm not saying you're right or wrong, but don't say it if you can't back it up statistically. And the second thing is, there are a lot of companies using what I would describe as punitive measures to determine if their workers are being productive, keystroke managers, and all of these things that they put on local machines. And I want to say, like, before the pandemic, did you not know how your teams, did you know other productivity measures? You had no other way of determining whether your team is being productive other than managing keystrokes? When your team is in the office, are you literally walking around over their shoulder to ensure their fingers are on their keyboards? I mean, it's the most insane and ludicrous response that I've ever seen. Don't our companies have measurements for our managers to use to measure the performance of our teams? I mean, for me, this is just, it speaks to the lack of commitment we've actually made to teaching managers how to manage their teams. And this idea that management is strictly punitive. You're not doing what we think. We can tell you're not doing it. That's not how you should manage people. There's no research evidence that suggests that punitive management works. Positive management works. Setting goals for people that they understand, that works for people.
One of my personal mandates is I want to create resume-making moments. That's my modum operandi, which is empowering people to see their journey and their growth to the point that it becomes a resume-making moment. And it's not always the big, the sales rep gets the big whale that lands in the company. But it's things that you do on a day-to-day basis that have an impact on our customers and each other in a positive way. And so I really spend time in performance check-ins and those kinds of things, talking to people about their resume-making moments that they've had. When you go through a rebrand, for example, as the chief market officer, there are a lot of people and pieces that go into that. And so when you come out with, you've defined the ICP you want to go after, that's a resume-making moment for the people that have been part of that journey. When you come out with new logo, new look, new feel, that's a resume-making moment for the graphic design team or the creative design team that you're working with. If they're internal, even if they're external, you've hired them. So every step along the way in a rebrand is a resume-making moment. For me, the resume-making moment is when the pipeline builds, right? So that the company can make more money, which is the goal for any company that you're working for.
Mayo Clinic is a great example. Mayo Clinic is usually ahead in technology and applying technology to these to the care space, and they have done interesting things with diagnosing and even predicting prognosis of their patients in spaces like cancer, for instance. I think the combination of what we can do with machine learning, for instance, and the data that we have available for patients, and now adding the genome and the ability for us to understand metabolism, as well as so how the drugs react or how effective they are within a specific person, because all of us metabolize drugs differently. So when you combine medical history with genetic information, with the ability to process that data and come up with predictions with more accurate diagnosis, then the least you should have is hope that we're going to be much more effective in early diagnosis of some conditions that can be treated early that will change the outcomes. For me, that's a very important topic, very, very important space, and I hope that the incentives are put in the right place, and that this fear of our data and privacy and this pressure that hackers and that the lack of security for our data and the potential impact of our data leaking does not derail us from being able to achieve the potential of applying something like machine learning to diagnosing and better being able to identify the prognosis and better and create drugs that are more specific to the needs of the patient and being able to prescribe those to the right patient. So, for instance, simple example is a painkiller. Some people react much better to Advil than Tylenol. And so for doctor knowing that, and knowing that Tylenol is the right drug without having to do the trial and error. Because what typically happens is that you go in, you get diagnosed for something, and they will give you a drug that they're comfortable. The provider will prescribe something that they're comfortable working with, that they hope is going to help you get better, but they don't know for sure, and they have many options that they could prescribe for the same diagnosis. So they will start with something, and they will start with a dose, and then they'll be watching you and how you react and adjusting that based on how you're reacting to the treatment. A good example of that is depression. There's people who go into depression and they get a treatment that gets that is followed closely by the doctor, and then that will be adjusted many times. Combination of pills, less of one, more of the other. Well, all of these could be simplified, and it could be much more effective if we can get, again, machine learning or AI in general to help us leverage that data that we have to be able to prescribe the better drug from the beginning.
Thanks for joining us on the AI to Z podcast with Anna Frazzetto. If you found value in today's episode, consider following for more insightful STEM discussions. We'll be back with another deep dive. Until then.